The road stretched out quiet and dark, slick with rain under the faint glow of streetlights. It was late, just past 11 p.m., and the traffic outside Birmingham, Alabama, had all but disappeared. The few cars that passed sent reflections skipping across the damp pavement. Commander Renee Dawson, off-duty and dressed in casual jeans and a dark sweater, had been driving for hours. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her focus was split between the road and the soft jazz humming through her speakers. She didn't expect trouble, just a quiet trip home. But then the flashing lights appeared behind her. Red and blue. Fast. Demanding. Her eyes flicked to the mirror, her breath catching not in fear, but in something heavier. Fatigue. Resignation. She'd seen this before. With practiced calm, she signaled and pulled onto the shoulder. She placed her car in park and kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. Old habits from years in the Navy. The patrol car stopped a few feet back. The door opened slowly. The officer who emerged didn't rush. He walked with a swagger that said he expected control every step, loud against the wet asphalt. His flashlight snapped on, cutting through the night, and as he approached, Renee caught a glimpse of the nameplate on his chest, Briggs. License and registration, he said, no preamble. No ma'am. No explanation. Renee glanced at him through her mirror, then moved slowly to retrieve her documents from the glove box. Was I speeding, officer, she asked, voice even and respectful. Briggs didn't respond at first. He took the documents and held them loosely, like he might drop them at any moment. Tail light's out, he muttered. She frowned. That shouldn't be the case. I had it checked recently. His eyes narrowed. Are you arguing with me? There it was. The unspoken tension. The invisible line drawn between authority and challenge. Renee recognized it. Not just from civilian life, but from training grounds overseas, from briefings about encounters gone wrong. She wasn't interested in confrontation, but she also wasn't about to be steamrolled. I'm not arguing, she said gently. Just saying I had the car serviced not long ago. But if something's wrong, I'll take care of it. Step out of the vehicle, Briggs interrupted, as though her words meant nothing. Renee took a deep breath. She looked at the empty stretch of road. No one watching. No cell phones recording. She tapped the steering wheel once, then slowly opened her door. Can I ask why, she said calmly, stepping into the cool air. Briggs gave her a crooked grin. Because I told you to. Renee studied him for a moment before walking to the rear of her car. Her stance was neutral, her body language controlled. Not afraid but alert. Hands on the car, Briggs ordered. She hesitated. For what reason? His expression hardened. Are you resisting? No, she replied evenly. I'm asking a question. Briggs stepped closer, his face changed frustration, maybe even a flicker of anger. He brought his radio up to his mouth. Got a non-compliant subject, he said, voice low. Then louder, turn around. Renee's pulse ticked up, but she stayed outwardly calm. Officer, she said, her voice now edged with steel, I want to be very clear, I know my rights. And I know what the law allows. You don't get to make this up as you go. That hit a nerve. Briggs's jaw tightened. You're under arrest, he snapped, reaching for his cuffs. Obstruction. She stepped back, just out of reach. On what grounds, she asked. Briggs didn't answer. He lunged again. But Renee was already prepared. Military discipline kicked in, reflexes trained over years of service. She didn't resist. She didn't fight. She just didn't let him control the narrative. And when it was over, when the arrest was processed and the reports filed, Renee didn't disappear. She showed up to court. Not in jeans. Not in silence. She arrived in full Navy dress uniform, medals gleaming on her chest, rank unmistakable. And when the judge asked for her version of events, she didn't raise her voice. She just spoke the truth. The courtroom was stunned. The footage from the dash cam. Her spotless record. Her calm. His aggression. Briggs was suspended. Later fired. His attempt at intimidation had cost him everything. Because the woman he tried to silence was not just another driver on a lonely highway. She was an officer. And she knew exactly how to defend herself by the book. Her movements were intentional, deliberate. She turned and placed her hands gently on the roof of her car. The metal felt cool against her palms. Officer Briggs didn't wait. He grabbed her arms roughly, snapping the cuffs around her wrists too tight, then shoved her toward the patrol car without a word. "You're making a mistake," she said softly. Briggs chuckled. "No, ma'am. I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't. Not even close. Renee slid onto the hard plastic seat, her back pressed against it awkwardly, the cuffs biting into her skin. She stayed still. Controlled. Her breathing steady despite the sting at her wrists. The door slammed shut with a thud, locking her in. Outside, Briggs strutted back to the driver's side, talking into his radio, the words too muffled to catch. Through the glass partition in front of her, she caught her own faint reflection composed on the outside, but behind her eyes, something sharp was simmering. She had endured hostile territory, dealt with hostile actors overseas, and faced down threats most people couldn't imagine. But this was different. This was someone playing God with a badge. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. She shifted slightly, testing the cuffs. Still too tight, intentional, without a doubt. The driver's door opened at last. Briggs slid into his seat, whistling softly like he didn't have a care in the world. Well, he said, buckling his seat belt. "Let's go for a little ride." Renee didn't answer. The car jerked forward, the lights still flashing above them. In the mirrors, the red and blue strobed across the dark road behind them. "You know," Briggs began after a moment, "most folks just do what I say. Makes things a whole lot easier." She exhaled slowly. "And most officers don't arrest someone just for asking a question." Briggs laughed. "You really think you're something special, don't you?" She met his eyes through the partition. "I don't think. I know." That gave him pause. His hands flexed on the wheel, jaw twitching. But then the smug grin returned. "You military?" he asked, casually. She didn't respond. "Yeah," he said. "I thought so. You got that attitude. Like the rules don't apply to you." He smirked. "Thought I'd let you off easy if you pulled rank, huh?" Still, she said nothing. He clicked his tongue. "Shame. This didn't have to go like this. But hey, you made your choices." Her jaw clenched. As if this whole thing was her fault. The station came into view, a low-slung, nondescript brick building tucked off the main road. The lot was mostly empty at this hour. Graveyard shift. Quiet. No one around. Briggs pulled into a marked spot near the front and cut the engine. He turned to look at her through the barrier. "Gotta admit," he said with a smirk, "it's fun when they make it easy." Before she could speak, he stepped out and slammed the door. A second later, her door swung open. "Out," he ordered. She stood, wrists still aching, the cuffs never loosened. Her spine straightened instinctively as she followed him inside, her footsteps calm and measured. They passed a bored-looking officer at the front desk who barely glanced up. Briggs led her toward booking. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled stale like coffee that had been sitting too long and walls that held too many stories. He unlocked the cuffs just long enough to walk her through the process: fingerprints, photo, paperwork. Routine. Mechanical. The officers barely spoke. She'd seen this before. Indifference. The kind that allowed power to rot in silence. When it was over, he gripped her wrist again, guiding her toward the cells. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he muttered. She gave him a sidelong look. "I don't need to think I am." His grip tightened in response. That struck a nerve. "Enjoy your night," he sneered, shoving her forward. She caught herself before stumbling. The metal bars slid shut behind her with a heavy clang. She turned to face him as the lock clicked into place. Briggs lingered just a moment, tapping the bars with his fingers, then turned and walked away. She sank onto the cold metal bench, the chill pressing through her jeans, grounding her. It would only take one night. Because Briggs had no idea who he'd just cuffed. The metal bench beneath her was unyielding, cold, hard, indifferent. Renee adjusted her posture slightly, rolling her shoulders to ease the dull ache settling in. The cell was bare, 4 blank walls, a dim, flickering light overhead, and the faint mingling scent of sweat and antiseptic. She had seen worse. Much worse. Overseas deployments had put her in harsher environments where danger was constant, not hypothetical. Compared to that, this holding cell was nothing. But that didn't mean she wasn't furious. From beyond the bars, the low murmur of voices drifted in, officers chatting at the front desk, the shuffle of papers, the clink of a ceramic mug on wood. Routine. Mundane. Indifferent. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled through her nose, slowly. Steady breath. Steady mind. Training that had been drilled into her long before her first mission. Stay sharp. Stay calm. Then she heard it, footsteps. Heavy, measured, familiar. Briggs. She recognized the rhythm even before he came into view. That cocky, self-assured gait of someone convinced the badge made him untouchable. He stepped into view, arms crossed, that smug expression back on his face like a badge of honor. "Comfortable?" he asked, eyebrows raised. She didn't reply. He stepped a little closer to the bars, smirk widening. "You know, if you'd just gone along with it, none of this would be happened." A faint, knowing smile tugged at her lips. "I'm exactly where I need to be." For a second, just a flicker, his face changed. The smirk twitched. Uncertainty, irritation. He masked it quickly with a scoff and looked around the holding area, which was still empty. "No one's coming to help you tonight," he said with a shrug. "Guess you'll have plenty of time to think about that attitude." Renee met his gaze, calm and unaffected. Briggs leaned in, dropping his voice just enough to sound threatening. "That's the problem with people like you. You think the rules bend for you. That a little confidence will get you out of everything." She let him go on. Let him hear himself talk. It didn't matter. He was already losing. Then, as if perfectly timed, another officer approached from the side hallway, tall, maybe in his 20s, clipboard in hand and hesitation written all over his face. "Sergeant," the young man began. Briggs turned his head slightly but didn't respond. The officer shifted, uncomfortable. "We got a call. You might wanna take a look." Briggs frowned, glancing briefly at Renee, then back at the clipboard. Well, someone up top is asking questions," the officer added. "They want details. About her detainment." Briggs muttered something under his breath and walked off in a hurry, his voice low and clearly irritated. Renee couldn't hear everything, but she caught fragments: legal representation, chain of command, and someone important demanding answers. Then, footsteps. Heavy. Angry. Briggs returned, face rigid, jaw clenched, fists curled at his sides. The smirk was gone. "What did you do?" he barked. Renee leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "Me? I didn't do anything." She tilted her head slightly, voice calm. But I know people, and some of them make very important phone calls. She saw it the way his posture faltered, the dawning realization behind his eyes. He wasn't in charge anymore. Without another word, Briggs spun on his heel and stormed away, muttering curses as he disappeared down the hallway. Renee exhaled slowly, settling back against the bench. It was only a matter of time now. And when the truth surfaced, Briggs would regret every arrogant decision that led to this moment. The sun filtered through the courthouse windows the next morning, casting long shafts of light across the polished tile floor. The air inside was chilled, crisp with the kind of stillness that made time feel slower. Renee stood at the defense table, composed. Her stance was relaxed, but her gaze was sharp and unmoving. No more handcuffs. No jumpsuit. No holding cell. Instead, she wore a clean, tailored navy blazer over a soft white blouse, simple, direct, undeniable. She stood tall, not just in appearance, but in presence. Beside her, her attorney Carla Whitman quietly flipped through legal documents. Precise. Efficient. Not one movement wasted. Not one word unnecessary. Renee respected that. The large double doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. Briggs entered. He carried himself like he still had authority, chin up, shoulders squared. But there was a difference now, a stiffness in his walk, a shadow behind his eyes. The certainty he once exuded had dimmed. He wasn't as sure anymore. And Renee saw it immediately. He caught a glimpse of her across the courtroom and quickly looked away. Good. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Judge Alan Kirkland, older, sharp-eyed, with the weary look of someone who had seen too many cases and too little justice, adjusted his glasses and sat down with a tired sigh. Let's get started, he said, flipping open the case file. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with smooth hair and a calm but assertive tone, rose. Your Honor, we have substantial reason to believe that Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson was detained without legal justification. In addition, recent developments point to a troubling pattern of questionable conduct by the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs. The courtroom stirred with murmurs. Briggs stiffened in his chair, his jaw tightening. The judge looked at him over his glasses. Sergeant Briggs, care to clarify? Briggs leaned forward, trying to sound composed. Your Honor, she was combative during a routine traffic stop. The prosecutor didn't wait. Combative. He lifted a document. This woman, he said, addressing the courtroom, is a Naval Academy graduate, decorated officer, and has no prior incidents or citations. Are you suggesting that a taillight issue justified her arrest, especially given her service record? Briggs opened his mouth, then paused, unable to respond. The prosecutor continued, flipping another page. Furthermore, an internal review shows your traffic stops disproportionately target black drivers in this area. The room buzzed louder this time. Briggs's face hardened. Judge Kirkland slowly closed the file and folded his hands. Sergeant, I don't like where this is headed. Briggs crossed his arms. She was resisting. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. Your own body cam footage disagrees. A hush fell. Let's view the footage, Judge Kirkland instructed. A screen lowered at the front of the room. The video began to play. Renee didn't watch. She didn't need to. Briggs barking orders. Her voice, steady and respectful. The unnecessary tension. The cuffs tightened with performative flair. The power trip. When the video ended, no one spoke. Judge Kirkland leaned forward, voice firm. Sergeant Briggs, you failed to follow protocol. You detained an officer without cause and withheld key details in your initial report. Briggs opened his mouth, but the judge cut him off. The case against Lieutenant Commander Dawson is dismissed. He brought the gavel down, the sound final and sharp. And I'm recommending a full review of Sergeant Briggs's actions by Internal Affairs. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted, like a snapped wire finally recoiling. Briggs sat motionless, cheeks flushed, fists clenched. Renee calmly gathered her belongings, her face unreadable. As she turned, she met Briggs's gaze one last time. They didn't exchange a single word. They didn't need to. He was the one on defense now. Briggs stormed from the courtroom, footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. His expression was tight, his body rigid. He could feel eyes on him, officers, court clerks, a few journalists who had arrived once word of the hearing spread. He wasn't used to scrutiny. He was used to deference. Command. But that grip was loosening. And then. Sergeant Briggs. A clipped voice cut through the hallway. He turned. Chief Eldon Baker stood a few feet away, arms folded, eyes unreadable. A seasoned leader, respected across the department. When Baker spoke, people listened. "Sir," Briggs said, standing straighter. Baker gave a small nod and motioned to a nearby office. Inside, the door closed with a soft but final click. Then Baker's voice changed. "What the hell were you thinking?" Briggs let out a tense breath. "I was doing my job." "Your job?" Baker tossed a folder onto the desk. It landed with a dull thud. "That's not what this looks like." He stepped forward. "The footage. The arrest stats. And the fact you had no idea who you pulled over. You made a mistake, one we all now have to answer for." Briggs bristled. "She challenged me." Baker cut in. "That's not illegal. You don't understand people like that." Baker's tone dropped ice cold. "People like what, Briggs?" Silence. Briggs swallowed, avoiding his gaze. Baker rubbed his temples. "The district attorney's office is combing through your cases from the last 5 years. You've been flagged for racial targeting." Briggs's heart sank. "So, what does that mean?" "It means you're suspended immediately. Internal Affairs is taking over. And if what they find confirms this pattern," he shook his head, "your badge won't protect you anymore." Briggs stood there, stunned. His world spinning. "This is ridiculous." "Don't," Baker warned. "Just don't pack your things. And if you're smart, call a lawyer." Briggs didn't argue. Not this time. His career was collapsing and he knew it. Across the city, Renee sat alone in a quiet cafe, stirring her coffee. Her phone buzzed with updates. News articles, notifications, messages. The video had gone viral. Decorated Navy officer wrongfully arrested. Officer under scrutiny. She wasn't surprised. She'd known, from the moment that traffic stop began, how it might unfold. She'd seen it before. Men like Briggs. Confident. Careless. Convinced their badge gave them impunity. But this time, he was wrong. Her phone vibrated again. A message from Carla: "Briggs suspended. Charges possible." Renee took a long sip of her drink. Good. Outside, the city moved on. She watched through the cafe window: cars, people, noise, life. The battle wasn't over. Not for her. Not for those Briggs may have wronged before. But today was a step forward. A win. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and fresh. Renee stepped outside, the weight of the past day lighter than expected. Her walk was steady, her chin high. The phone rang again, this time, a number she knew. She answered. "Lieutenant Commander," the familiar voice said. "I take it you've seen the headlines." "I have." A pause. "And how are you feeling?" Renee looked at her reflection in the cafe window. Calm. Collected. Still herself. "I feel like I did what needed to be done." "I figured you'd say that," the captain replied. "The Department of Defense is paying attention. You might be asked to speak about this publicly. Renee sighed. I'm not looking to be a symbol. You already are, the captain said gently. And what happened to you represents something bigger. She knew that. She'd always known. Briggs was just one cog in a flawed machine. He wasn't unique. But what happened to her that happened every day to people without rank? Without evidence? Without backup? She leaned against a lamppost, watching traffic roll past. This isn't the first time something like this has happened, she said quietly. And it won't be the last. No, the captain agreed. But it's the first time someone like Briggs is being held accountable, and that's because you stood your ground. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting those words settle in her chest. She had stood firm from the road, to the cell, to the courtroom. And it had made a difference. The captain added, one more thing you might be hearing from the mayor's office. They want to commend you for how you handled it. She blinked. Seriously? Seems so. Renee smirked. Now that's ironic, the captain laughed. You going to accept? She shrugged. I'll think about it. She ended the call and tucked the phone away. Across the street, a little boy walked hand in hand with his mother, laughing, full of light and ease. Renee watched for a moment. She hadn't just stood up for herself. She had stood up for him. For every child who deserved better than what the system too often delivered. She took a deep breath and walked on. Her stride was strong. Her purpose, unshakable. Because this fight had never been about just her. Power unchallenged becomes power abused. What happened to Renee happens daily to people who lack the rank, the connections, or the video evidence to fight back. That's why voices matter. Why truth matters. If this story made you pause, share it. If it made you angry, talk about it. And if it opened your eyes to how far we still have to go, stay engaged. Because change doesn't start in silence.